Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our press conference today. My name is Suna Samsami. I'm the representative of the National Council of Resistance of Iran in the United States. The Iranian resistance has repeatedly stated over the past 3 decades that the regime's survival relies on 2 main pillars. Internally, it relies on repression, and externally, it relies on exporting terrorism and warmongering, including meddling in regional countries and pursuing a nuclear bomb. These are the foundations of the regime's foreign policy. After it blows it has received in the region in recent months, the Iranian regime is seeking to expedite and strengthen its quest for nuclear weapons. Reports obtained by the NCRI Defense and Strategic Research Committee indicates that the regime has intensified activities related to MEDFAS, one of the entities under the SEPAND, the Organization of Defense Innovation and Research, which is responsible for advancing the development of nuclear bomb, and that the effort is to accelerate the construction of a nuclear warhead. While global attention remains focused on the quantity and enrichment levels for enriched uranium needed to produce fissile material for a nuclear bomb by the Iranian regime, the actual bomb making has not been addressed. The Iranian regime has been covertly working on the weaponization aspects of its nuclear project to build a warhead, effectively obstructing verification through deceit. One of the key areas of focus in our conference today is the development of explosive detonators. According to our information obtained from the sources from the MEK PMI inside Iran, the entity called MEDFAS, we have the name of it, MEDFAS, on that corner. That entity, which in Farsi, it's abbreviation of Research Development Center for Explosion and Impact, operates under the guise of a company affiliated with the Ministry of Defense and the IRGC called Arvin Kimya Abzar, which ostensibly operates in the oil and petroleum extraction industry. However, the Iranian resistance information shows that it's entirely controlled by the same individuals and entities tasked with nuclear warhead production. Arvin Kimya Abzar Company, which you'll see the name there on the third one, Arvin Kimya Abzar Front Company, was started operating in 2018 and officially relocated in April 2024 near the village of Sanjarian. The protected site of this company, now known as the Mishkat Complex. My colleague, Mr. Jafarzadeh, will explain all the technical and details of the site and MEDFAS activities later. The information we are sharing with you today indicates that the regime demonstrates no transparency in building a nuclear bomb and is rapidly advancing toward bomb production. It's absolutely essential for the IAEA to immediately visit this site and other relevant sites and conduct a thorough inspection. Over the past 34 years, since the Iranian resistance exposed the regime's nuclear weapons program, particularly since August 2002, when the Natanz site was revealed, the Iranian regime has never cooperated with the international community or the IAEA, let alone voluntarily report any of its nuclear activities to the agency. It was the Iranian resistance that we have revealed so many of the site and all these activities. 2 days ago, in the UN Security Council meeting, 3 European countries issued a statement declaring that there is no civilian justification for Tehran having enriched uranium. The reality is that despite all the warnings from the Iranian resistance, the West, due to its policy of appeasement, has wasted at least 20 years in fruitless negotiations. Instead of holding the regime accountable, the regime, as acknowledged by its own highest-ranking officials like Hassan Rouhani, has exploited this window of time to advance its nuclear program and move closer to acquiring nuclear weapons. Therefore, it must be firmly stated that enough is enough. The mullah's regime has been severely weakened since the 2022 uprising in Iran, and especially after the fall of the Bashar al-Assad. The regional balance of power has shifted completely against Ali Khamenei. In such dire circumstances, the regime is likely to invest significantly more energy and resources in building a nuclear bomb, and confirmed by the Iranian resistance sources inside Iran. The only long-term solution to prevent the regime from obtaining the world's most dangerous weapon is its overthrow by the people and the Iranian resistance, the organized resistance, a goal that is attainable more than ever before. Mrs. Maryam Rajavi, the President-elect of National Council of Resistance of Iran, on December 7, a couple of days ago, during an online address at the U.S. House of Representatives, mentioned that after regime's failure in the region, it has accelerated its nuclear weapons program to avoid its downfall. Therefore, the snapback mechanism in UN Security Council Resolution 2231 must be activated immediately. However, the ultimate solution to prevent a terrorist regime like Iranian government from obtaining nuclear weapons is its overthrow by the Iranian people and its organized resistance. Now, I ask my colleague, Mr. Jafarzadeh, Deputy Director of the NCRI, to provide with all these details with our new information today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Samsami. And thank you, everybody, for coming to our office in NCRI-US office in Washington, D.C. I am going to provide more details about what Ms. Samsami elaborated here. The pursuit of nuclear detonation devices, an integral part of the nuclear weapons program of the Iranian regime. Let me first specify the source of the information is coming from the Defense and Strategic Research Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, which they themselves rely on the network inside Iran of the main organized opposition, the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, or PMI or MK. And as you all know, they have been proven very accurate in the past, and you've seen some of the revelations in the past, starting from the Natanz uranium enrichment facility in August of 2002, which basically triggered the IAEA inspections of Iranian nuclear sites for the first time, to a whole host of activities that the Iran regime has been doing. And this new information that I will elaborate on more has all been received this month in December 2024. So not only they're relevant, but they're very, very new. And we want to make sure that the world knows about this. So let's start by saying a few things first. First, this event is being live streamed on our YouTube account and our Twitter or X account. and it's at NCRI-US. Also, I know there are a lot of reporters who are watching this online, so if you have any questions between now and the time of the Q&A, please feel free to email them to media@ncrius.org. Please email your questions from reporters to media@ncrius.org. So let's get to the details. We are going to talk about today about METFAS, as Ms. Samsami mentioned. METFAS actually is a Farsi acronym that stands for مرکز تحقیقات و توسعه فناوری انفجار و ضربه, or basically the Center for Research and Expansion of Technologies on Explosions and Impact. METFAS plays a crucial role in the nuclear weapons program of the Iran regime. It's one of the key parts of the bomb-making organization known as the Organization for the Advanced Defense Research, SEPAND, SPND, to intensify the development of nuclear warheads. By the way, SEPAND was also first exposed by the by the Iranian resistance back in July of 2011. Now, SEPAND is a subdivision of the Ministry of Defense that is commanded now by Brigadier General Reza Mozaffarini. He's an IRGC Brigadier General. He succeeded in November 2020. Now, escalation, intensification of the activities of METFAS is focused on two areas. First, in terms of research and manufacturing related to and but including, not limited to, including the EBW, explosive detonation devices, that is absolutely crucial in the development of nuclear weapons. Now, let's take a look at this map of Tehran. You can see the city of Tehran right here on the aerial map on the left side, and you can see a huge area here that is predominantly military zone. Most of the parts here are controlled by the Iranian regime's military, specifically the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. This is the type of the site that we're going to be talking about today, Sanjarian site. You can see it in terms of the location, which is east of Tehran. And then we will be talking about Parchin site, specifically Plan 6 of the site in Parchin, which is to the south of Sanjarian site. And also you've seen here the Khojair area. This is a military site. We have done a lot of revelations about the different parts of Khojair dating back to many years ago, including in 2008, with the extensive details of the activities that the regime has been doing, both in terms of the nuclear weapons program, but also their missile program. So let's get a closer look. And this is the Sanjarian, that area that we're going to be focusing on today. It's a village nearby. This is the village of Sanjarian. It's a very small village, and this is a larger imagery area of that. This is the area that we're interested in, that we first exposed in 2009. A closer look. This is exactly how it looked like in 2009 when we first exposed it, and we said that there research shaping up here related to the detonation and the nuclear weapons program of the Iranian regime. We did further discussion of this in 2017. This is how the site looked like, and you can see there was really not much difference between 2009 and 2017 in terms of the vicinity, but also specifically about the site itself. At the time, we said that much of the activities that were carried out by METFAS here were now moved to Plan 6 of of Parchin site. And this is how it looks like today. And you can see the site itself, the buildings are the same, not new constructions. The only difference you can see is that the house built right across that didn't show up in the past. But this site, this house also, we know all the details. We know who owns it. It's controlled by the regime itself. So the area remains completely militarily controlled by the regime. Now, this site, Sanjarian, is the place that was actually part of the nuclear weapons program of the Iran regime, known as the Ahmad plan, dating back to some 3 decades ago. And Medfaz uses this site, Sanjarian, for its research activities related to the weaponization to trigger. It's now called Meshkat complex. This is the new information that we got very, very recently, that in their internal communications, this site is now referred to Meshkat complex, so that the information would not leak out. There are very few personnel there at this site. It's not something that you would have like hundreds of people coming in and going. There are very specific people are there for very specific research activities related to that. Now, in order to go back to Medfaz and reactivating it and doing a number of research there, the regime has created a new cover for this, because since we exposed it in 2009, there are like dozens of reports, including at the IAEA reports, but everybody else has been talking about it. So part of the activities of the Medfaz are now carried out under the cover of the company that is newly formed called Arvin Kimya Abzar company. Now, this company is actually affiliated with the Ministry of Defense, specifically the Revolution Guards, the IRGC. Now, the Arvin Kimya Abzar company actually justifies its activities under the cover that they are involved in oil and energy and oil wells. And they said that they're focused on tools and materials used in the oil industry, drilling and operation of oil wells. This is done actually to conceal the real purpose of this company. And they're basically involved in high explosive materials. The information we have on the ground, but also the makeup of the personnel of this organization makes it very clear that it has nothing to do with oil and oil drilling. It's all about weaponization of the nuclear program of the Iran regime. Ironically, they have no official website, and the website they started in 2020 just remains unfinished. And so it's very clear that it's really a cover and not a real company created to do business or to carry out the kind of activities that they suggest they're doing. Now, let's look at the personnel involved with it. On top of the list is Saeed Borji. Now, Saeed Borji is actually the chairman of the board of this company. And then the next person is Akbar Motallabizadeh. He is the CEO of this company. And then you have Mahmoud Tahiri Shahrara'i. He is the head of the research, and he's an expert with the Ministry of Defense of the Iran regime. And he worked in the aerospace organization in Parchin, all of them related to defense, nothing to do with oil and oil drilling. Now, both Borji and Motallabizadeh, they were key figures since day one. They've been key figures in Sepand, whose job was to build the bomb. They worked actually in conjunction with Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the top nuclear scientist who was in charge of the bomb making. And they worked in various parts of the manufacturing of the nuclear warheads, nuclear weapons, and explosive detonations. And they specifically worked on the EBWs, which is crucial to do multi-point simultaneous explosion, which is a crucial part for building the bomb. Having the fissile material, which is usually enriched uranium to weapons grade, then you need to be able to detonate it. And in order to do that, EBWs, for an implosion bomb at least, EBWs are a crucial part of it. And of course, as I mentioned, both of them worked with Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. And now, Borge is a very specific figure that is of interest to, the IAEA, anybody. We first exposed him almost 2 decades ago. And he has been a member of the IRGC since 1980. He has been involved in various tests, both in Parchin, but mostly involved in high explosive tests that is crucial for for building a nuclear warhead. And he's interesting. He was trained by Vyacheslav Danilenko around the year 2000. And Danilenko, some of you may be interested in knowing that, is a former Soviet whose expertise was high explosive tests. He has a Russian and Ukrainian nationality. He actually lived and worked in Iran from 1996 to about 2001, 2002. And he was involved in high explosive chamber tests in various places, including in Parchin, which was one of the main points of contention between the IAEA and the Iranian regime. So, going back to the site in Sanjarian, I mentioned that. I also mentioned Plan 6 of Parchin. Let's take a look at that. This is the site that we first exposed in a press conference right here in Washington in 2017. And we said this is a site, the part of Parchin. Parchin is a very large place, has 12 different sections, or they call it 12 plans. But Plan 6 is also referred to as Zainuddin Industries, is the part that we exposed that Medfaz was using it for high explosive testing, and it got a lot of attention at the time. And the Medfaz, this is the Plan 6 in Parchin, which when we exposed it, look at the infrastructure there, and then compare it with the 2024. You can see a lot of new construction and facilities to the east and south of it. That's how much this place has expanded, all of them under the control of FOS. This place has never been inspected by the IAEA. Nor was the site in Sanjarian, now known as Meshkat. And so let's take an aerial look at the site. This is, of course, the map of Iran. That's Tehran. And we're zooming in on the location in Sanjarian, the military zone there. And that's the site now called Meshkat site. Just take a look at the vicinity of it, entirely military area with some locals in the village. And then we're moving down further to Parchin, the Plan 6 of Parchin, which is right below the Malmo Dam. That's Plan 6 of Parchin. You can see both the infrastructure, but also the expansion that Parchin Plan 6 has gone through, and all of it controlled and run by Medfaz, focused on the weaponization part of the program. So that's Meshkat. This is Plan 6 of Parchin. These are the two sites that we're focusing today, because we want the world know that the weaponization part of the program, which has been very little attention to it, almost no scrutiny at all, and the focus is entirely on the enrichment program or the fissile material, but the most important part, which is weaponization, has basically been off radars, and that's where the focus, and that's where the stepped up activities of METFAS has been. Now, there are a lot of security involved in it. They want to keep everything secret. So the location and the activities are strictly confidential. The locals, those villagers who live in Sanjarian, they have no idea what's going on there. The only thing they know is off limits. You cannot go there. This is a military zone. And they basically confiscated a lot of the land from the locals. And we've gotten a lot of on-the-ground information reports from the locals who are saying, you know, one day they showed up, they took the land, they put a fence there, saying you can't go there. And there were a lot of complaints that, we had just very recent complaint that we received that one of the locals was saying that, the water, the spring that produces water for the village, the main part of it is now in the military zone, controlled by them. And for some time, a fox had fallen into that, water container. They wouldn't allow the locals to take out the rotten body of the animal, and they had to just use that water. And it took them about 3 months to go back and forth to be able to do it. That's how much control they have over the situation, but also how much dissatisfaction has been created around just the mere presence of Sanjarian. All that very active. In fact, that's what they're doing there. There are special passes for the villagers to go there. When you look at the highway, actually, the Parchin Road that leads to that place, you can see the checkpoint right here. And the locals will have to have a special pass, even though they're not military people, but they need special pass to be able to go through and get to the point. Now, we have noticed that not only the activities of METFAS have been expanded, but we've been able to identify some of the top experts or managers, those who are running the show at METFAS. And the list that we have now contains 26 top experts and managers, including Saeed Borji that I mentioned there, Akbar Mutallabizadeh, also a top expert, top manager, Mohammad Ferdowsi, who for some time we knew he was heading METFAS, still in those key positions, both in terms of expertise, but also in terms of the managerial position. You notice that in a lot of the cases, not only we have the position of the experts involved, but also we have identified their national ID number. National ID number is something like, similar to Social Security number here. It's only one identical number for each person. This way, in most of the persons that have been able to identify it, you can see a total of 26. This way they cannot say, oh, this is like a similar name, or, there's too many Saids, too many Muhammad. No, these are specific things, these specific details. So having said that, let me just summarize what we actually discussed. Can you just get it on the the slideshow? Yes. So let me just summarize what I said today. We exposed the escalation of the weaponization part of the nuclear weapons program of the Iranian regime. We discussed METFAS, that the site in Sanjarian that was pretty inactive before has now been reactivated with a new presence of the top experts of METFAS there. We also talked about the new name that this place now has internally called Meshkat. We also talked about the cover that is now being used, justifying their activities there under the oil well or oil field, which is not true based on the information we have on the ground. We also highlighted the stepped-up activities in Plan 6 in Parchin, and in conjunction with the two, highlighting how the weaponization part of the program has been escalating. You put this next to the level of defiance of the Iranian regime in dealing with the international community, specifically the IAEA, how they've been just basically dashing, going their own way, knowing fully well that the UN Security Council Resolution 2231, there's not much of it left. In about 10 months, it's going to be done. It's going to be finished. And they will be on their own route to building the bomb. And the regime has basically rebuffed the IAEA. Anytime questions raised about the weaponization part of their program. And that's why it's so important to realize that while the regime has gotten significantly weak in the region and also inside the country, the one thing that is remained for them is to dash towards building the bomb. And that's where we need to focus. Honestly speaking, as Ms. Samsami said, there's only one way that you can truly contain the nuclear threat of the Iranian regime, and that's the change of the regime by the people of Iran, and that's something that has been reachable now more than any time ever. So with that, I want to stop here, and I want to go to the media, both those of you who are here, but those of you who are online, to please questions. I also have the kit that has the information they're going to distribute among you, that you will have the information that I shared here. You will have it with you as well. So anyone who wants to ask a question, please raise your hand. There is a microphone. They are circulating. Identify yourself and then ask your question. Please.
Thank you, Ali Reza. I'm Claire Lopez, Lopez Liberty, LLC. That was a sobering presentation. I remember back in November of 2011, the IAEA's quarterly governor's report talked about exploding bridge wire nuclear initiators.
Right.
And they also, in that same report, as I recall, mentioned Vyacheslav Danilenko as a Russian who was helping, I think, with the formation of the pit, right? The metallurgical work on the pit of the bomb. That was 13 years ago. How is it possible this regime does not already have warheads, at least a small handful?
Well, you raise a very important question. A lot of the, what they call outstanding issues that were lingering between the IAEA and the Iranian regime remained outstanding. There were 12 points raised by the IAEA, all of them related to what they call PMD, possible military dimensions, which it means like weaponization, which means building the bomb. And those outstanding questions were never resolved. Interestingly, 4 out of those 12 questions specifically dealt with METWAs, the activities of METWAs, including the EBW. But basically what the regime did, and they cut a deal in 2015 when the nuclear agreement, the JCPOA, was being agreed upon. Basically all of those 12 points were put under the rug, and they just shelved it, saying, forget about it, let's just move on and move forward. Well, when you have a regime building the bomb, that is the heart of the problem. You cannot shelve it. And you can see now it's coming back and haunting everybody. because that's the core. You can count the number of kilograms of the enriched uranium. You can measure the level of enrichment to have the fissile material and discuss what level it should stay. But the most important part is actually the weaponization that has been off limits. The regime basically rejected that, wouldn't allow. Most of the sites that we exposed that related to weaponization, including the site in Sanjanian, we talked about that, Labizan, Shian. There's a whole host of sites that we discussed that all of them dealt with weaponization. None of them were inspected because the Iran regime would not allow it, and the outside world would just basically simply accept it. And this is where you are. Now they're negotiating if they can get the agreement of the Iran regime to not increase the level, the amount of 60% enriched uranium. Wait a minute. According to the JCPOA, none of that is allowed. The UN report that just was mentioned a couple of days ago, they said that the Iran regime has 32 times as high, enriched uranium, as much enriched uranium as they were supposed to. The question is why? The question is, what is the outside world going to do about this? At least based on the things we know, and I have to confess that there's a lot of things we don't know. We didn't know much of the things that we exposed until we found out about them. But based on what we already know, this regime shouldn't have been there. In 2002, between 2002 and 2003, that the NCRI exposed several major nuclear sites of Iran, starting with Natanz, and we have some of them showing here. We showed a complete picture of the nuclear weapons program of the Iranian regime, expecting that the outside world would act and hold the regime accountable. Instead, they got into negotiations, the EU3, they went back and forth, they gave what Tehran wanted. They made the whole thing, the regime used that as a political leverage, targeting its own people, its own organized opposition, just going its way. And that trend has continued. And that's why when we say the policy of appeasement is destructive, this is one example of that. And that's why we say, as Mrs. Samsami said earlier, enough is enough. We need to stop here. We need to hold the regime accountable. And we need to do everything possible to make sure that the Iranian regime does not get to the nuclear bomb, because they're speeding up like never before, because they're much more in need of that than they have ever been. Please, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Corey Walker. I'm with the Algeminer. I was wondering, you obviously are not a fan of the current administration's approach to Iran, but I was wondering, do you have any, a wish list or any advice for the incoming Trump administration? How would you like to see them approach Iran? Obviously you don't believe there should be appeasement. Do you think that they should resume the maximum pressure campaign on Iran? What do you think can be done to reverse the nuclear proliferation that we've seen accelerating over in that region?
Well, what I'm going to tell you is what we have been saying for decades, for many years, regardless of who is in the White House or who sits in the capitals in Europe. The Iran regime must be held accountable for their rogue behavior, whether it's their terrorism, their weapons of mass destruction, their missile program, or the repression inside the country. The policy of appeasement has done exactly the opposite. It further allowed the Iran regime to expand and turn terrorism into a profitable business and turn their nuclear weapons program into a leverage to gain concessions from the outside. So that needs to be reversed. How? By holding them accountable, imposing sanctions. All of those entities need to be sanctioned, not only on the nuclear issue, but everything that is giving life to the Iranian regime, whether their economy, and also taking away the legitimacy from this regime that doesn't belong to them. Unfortunately, over the years, the nuclear program of the Iran regime was legitimized. They accepted them having, enrichment program. None of that should have been there in day one. And also, you remember, this is 2024. This is a situation that the regime is facing tremendous trouble inside the country. This regime is rejected by its own people. Since 2018, there have been 9 rounds of major uprisings in Iran, most of them engulfing all 31 provinces of the country, people calling for change. So that's the call that needs to be heard and supported basically by the way to do it is to recognizing the legitimacy of those people, the organized resistance, the people of Iran who want to bring down this regime, to overthrow it, and recognizing the legitimacy of defending, the people defending those who are in resistance units, standing up and fighting the regime. That needs to be recognized. So all of those things need to come. But when it comes to specific on this issue, you need to have snapback. It's embedded in the U.S. Security Council Resolution 2231. You have the means to use it. It hasn't been used. Now is the time. I don't know what else should the regime do for them to use this mechanism. And there's still time to use that. And I think all of the countries, not just the United States, European nations, should get involved and immediately apply the snapback and bring back all of the sanctions, taking away the legitimacy of the Iranian regime nuclear program. And I think this will actually help expedite what's really happening inside the country. If what's happening in the region, in Syria and other places, is an indication this regime is in big trouble. They're weak regionally, they're weak inside the country, and they're on their back foot. The people are gaining momentum. Now is the time to side with them. Any other questions? Do you have any questions online?
Yes.
Yes.
First question is by Mr. Debusman from BBC. That she's asking, what would you like to see from the new Trump administration as far as its politics towards Iran is concerned? Have you so far had any discussions with the transition team?
Well, as I said, what we have for the incoming administration is the same as what we have for the sitting administration or the previous administration. Their policy has to be an end to the appeasement policy. Their policy has to be based on holding the regime accountable for their terrorism and rights violations and their nuclear weapons, but also killings inside the country. Their policy has to be recognizing the right of the people of Iran to overthrow this regime. Overthrowing this regime, just think about it. First of all, and more foremost, is the desire of the people of Iran. The same way that people in Syria stood up and brought down the dictatorship of Bashar al-Assad, which, by the way, had its biggest backer, the Iranian regime. And so that's a desire that the world has to recognize and has to accept. There is really no need for money or anything else, no resources. All they need to do is hold the regime accountable, imposing sanctions, and recognizing the right of the people to change the regime. Look at the situation in Syria. The Iranian regime had spent billions of dollars, at least $50 billion just a few years ago, according to their own official sources, that they had spent in Syria to hold Assad in power. We had reports in 2015 and 2016 that as many as 70,000 proxies of the Iranian regime, whether it was Hezbollah or the Fatimiyun, the Hashd al-Shabi and others, operating in Syria in 18 different military places, trying to keep Assad in power. They fought for years to take back Aleppo. from the opposition. But when the circumstances change, when you see the momentum is shifting so big that the regime cannot keep its biggest ally in the region, a country of Syria, which the regime called the 35th province of Iran, saying that Syria and Assad gives the regime strategic depth, that if we don't fight in Syria, we have to fight in Iran. All of that is now gone in a matter of days. And remember, the call of the people of Iran during the protests was that, leave Syria alone, think about us. And that's how all of this is now being impacted inside the country. So the regime really has run out of a lot of the resources and everything. So my suggestion to anybody, including the incoming administration, as it is to the current administration, is that recognize the new realities in Iran, in the region, and build your policy accordingly. This is the end of appeasement policy. This is the era that you need to side with the people of Iran as they are seeking change.
Thank you.
Please, I think I have a question here. Okay. Well, let's go here, and then we'll go back to online.
Okay. I'll start from the Times. Are you seeing any Russian involvement in the revelations you've described today? We've seen, obviously, greater ties between Russia and Iran in recent years, particularly with Ukraine. Are you seeing any Russian involvement at all in the situation you described this morning?
You mean what we discussed today? Well, the Russians' relationship with the Iran regime is, I think it's a known fact. I don't need to really talk about it. It was Russia that, on behalf of Tehran, intervened in Syria trying to keep Assad in power, and they have been providing all kinds of assistance to the Iran regime, whether it was their missile program or their nuclear weapons program. We just talked about, Danilenko, who was, clearly a former Soviet national, and so that has been there. But I think what the Iran regime has done over the years, they have used whatever expertise they were able to get from outside of Iran and try to turn that into like an internal asset. They use those experts, including Danilenko, for instance, to train their own experts inside Iran and then continue their activities on their own. They did the same thing with other countries. We had, for instance, on their drone program, the regime used different covers from companies to gain expertise and material, but they were building a lot of that internally. So I have no doubt that there has been support from them, but a lot of it is actually coming from, locally inside the country. But at the end of the day, no matter what the regime does, how advanced their nuclear weapons program is, remember the people of Iran are opposed to building the nuclear bomb because they see it detrimental to their faith. The regime has spent $2 trillion in its nuclear weapons program over the years, both in terms of assets they spent or the damages as a result of that. So that's a huge liability for the Iranian regime, that the people of Iran are opposed to it. The people of Iran are opposed to spending money on anything that doesn't serve their interest, whether it's the war in the region, their proxy groups, their nuclear weapons program, their expansive missile program and drone program, none of which have any interest for the people of Iran. So I think they will be the final player. Yes.
Next question from Sepen Communications, and the question by John Sepen is, in light of what you have revealed today, what do you expect the IAEA do? Grossi sounded a very optimistic tone after his last trip to Iran.
Well, the IAEA, I think, just looking at their own reports and the way they have stalled for years, and the more they negotiate and try to work closely with the Iranian regime, the less resolve they get. the more emboldened the Iran regime gets. Every time that there is time close to the IAEA Board of Governors meetings, the regime invites the directors of the IAEA to Iran, makes certain promises, almost none of which is ever fulfilled. And in order to avoid sanctions, avoid being referred to the Security Council, avoid resolutions, I think now is the time to end all of that. There's nothing else that they have tried that they need to try now. None of that. They need to do what they were always expected to do, to hold the regime accountable. Don't close your eyes on the realities on the ground. Those issues related to weaponization are extremely crucial. The regime should have never been allowed to enrich uranium to the levels that we're doing, expelling IAEA experts, shutting down the cameras, violating their own commitments, both under the JCPOA but also under the NPT. This is a regime that is dashing rapidly towards building the bomb. The world knows it. The IAEA knows it. All the countries in the world know it. The people of Iran know it. They need to act now.
Well, one last. Go ahead.
It's Cameron Henderson from the Telegraph. I wonder, you've talked about the intensification of the program. I wonder, is there a way we can quantify some of that intensification, a figure we can put on things, or a sort of target that the regime has reached with that weaponization?
Well, in terms of quantifying the level of advancement, it's really hard to give numbers or figures, anything like that. But I can say one thing. There were at least 4 areas that dealt with weaponization that has been lingering questions related to the IAEA. In all of those areas, the regime has moved forward. And that should be a big concern. Why would the regime reactivate Sanjarian under a different cover? Why would the regime focus on EBW? This is a very, very crucial issue. Even though this issue has been going on for over a decade and everybody knew about it, but now the regime, in a very blunt way, is intensifying activities there. Why has Plan 6 in Parchin expanded? As you can visibly see it. All of these are indications that when it comes to the weaponization, that's where they need to focus. They don't need to wait until you see a test or the actual bomb. All of the indications are already there. I don't know what else anyone else is waiting for. Now is the time.
One last question. This is posted on our social media. We have been asked that you have explained how the regime has been weakened. Has it been less dangerous?
Well, certainly the regime has been significantly weakened, but that didn't make them less dangerous. In fact, they will just use all of their last resources in any area it's possible, whether it's their terrorism, their activities in the region. But also specifically, I think the one area that we need to focus is the nuclear weapons program of the regime. I think out of all the other various threats of the regime, whether their proxies and their activities in the region, their warmongering, they have received major blows in those areas. The one area that they're counting on, and is crucial for the survival of the regime, is the nuclear weapons program of Iran. And that's where I think the focus should be. They're more dangerous there than they have ever been. They will go head on, as they're doing. They may avoid taking some precautionary measures that they used to make because they feel like this is the last round. And that's why I think everyone should be concerned, whether it's the capitals in Europe or right here in Washington. That's where you want to focus. You want to make sure that the Iran regime doesn't get the bomb. But in reality, there's so much unknown. There's so many different unknown sites that there is really one sure way, only one sure way, to end the threat of the nuclear weapons program of the Iran regime, and that's ending the rule of the mullahs in Iran. And that's obviously the responsibility of the people of Iran, the organized resistance, the resistance units in Iran, and the National Council of Resistance of Iran is the alternative to this regime. And I think anyone who is concerned about the nuclear weapons program of Iran, they need to focus on the prospect for change in Iran and what the NCRI is doing outside of Iran and the MEK and the resistance units inside Iran.
There are a few more questions, but we ran out of time, so we can just conclude the Q&A here. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone of you who've come. Did you have a question, last question? Please, go ahead.
What do you think the odds of war against Iran have intensified, whether it's the United States declaring war against Iran or like some other? I mean, I guess Iran technically is in conflict with the general region, but like, do you think the odds of America going to war against Iran have intensified or increased as a result of these new revelations?
Well, you know, I can't just do speculations, but when it comes to the confrontation, first of all, the Iranian regime has been at war, not just with its own people, but the whole region. What else do you expect the Iran regime to do when they had, you know, killing countless number of people in Syria by actually sending and admitting that they have their own troops plus their own proxies? The Revolutionary Guards were on the ground. The regular army, some personnel of the army were on the ground, plus, you know, tens of thousands of their proxies there. Who was the biggest backer and promoter and funder and trainer of Hezbollah? The Iran regime. All the money and training and everything came from there, waging war, you know, against the whole region. Look at the situation in Iraq. Look at the whole region. The Iran regime has invested on war and warmongering in the whole region. I think the only way ahead of us is to end all of that. And that's where I think, you know, we come in. The people of Iran, the organized resistance, trying to end the war that the regime has waged against its own people, but also the whole region.
One last question.
Okay.
Josh Klein from Breitbart.
Yes.
Question is, it seems this activity is all being conducted a bit overt. Do you agree with that? And if so, are Iran intensifying as a signal to the world?
What was the first question? It was being conducted with what?
It seems that all these activities are being conducted covertly.
Oh, yes.
Do you agree with that? And if so, are they intensifying as a signal to the world?
Well, they're still keeping things covert. You know, everything that you know about the regime's nuclear weapons program has come as a result of revelations, either predominantly our own revelations, that started in the 1990s, but most significantly 2002 when Natanz was revealed, and then things that were followed up after that. There is not a single case that the Iran regime has come forward voluntarily saying this is what we're doing, this is our activity, this is our program. None of that. It has always been covert, it will always remain covert. But the level of escalation that we have seen, the level of resources that they are now allocating is a clear indication that they are intensifying their efforts. The regime is intensifying its effort to dashing toward building the bomb as the only means for its survival. Okay. I want to thank every one of you, for those of you who are here, but those of you who joined us online. Thank you very much, and looking forward for the upcoming press conferences. Thank you.